Good morning and welcome to the School and Nursery Show here in Dubai. We're on the second day of the show, a tremendous success so far with thousands of people who've joined us both virtually online through our discussion topics and here in person in the hall yesterday. Today I'm sure will be just as busy a day. One of the panel discussions that we had yesterday proved to be incredibly informative but also incredibly popular with nearly 8,000 hits in terms of people watching, and it's that perennial question that parents often ask, and it's to do with understanding the different curriculum options and choices that are here in Dubai. Which curriculum? How do I choose the curriculum and why? I'm delighted this morning that joining me on the panel are Mr. James Lynch, who is the principal at Ambassador International Academy. Also joining me is Mr. David Moore from Capital School, and also Mr. David Hudson, who's the head of school from Dwight School here in Dubai. So a mixture and a range of curriculums. Really grateful, gentlemen, that you've come in on a Saturday morning to join us here for these discussions. And look, we'll probably start by saying curriculum is probably not the top thing in the list when it comes to choosing a school. It's about the school. But it still is a question that parents want answered. And I think we owe them the courtesy of talking through the different curriculums, talking through the different choices and the different models. David, if I can begin with you, where does a parent begin, particularly if I'm a parent perhaps that's coming from Korea and I have no experience of any of the curriculum models on offer here in Dubai? What would you tell them to start with in terms of their thinking and their choices?
Well, I think what you said initially is correct. They need to look at the school and see how it feels, because I think in the end, when you're looking at curricula, there are many different options. Some of them are community-based. So some of them, for example, if you want a Filipino school, you go to a Philippine curriculum. If you want to, and that helps people to feel comfortable because they know what they're going to. But I think when you look at other curriculum, the more sort of maybe international-minded curriculum, like, for example, the UK curriculum, you have to have an idea of the different methodologies that are generally used by teachers. So, for example, if you're looking at a CBSE school compared to a UK school, then I think there's a quite fundamental difference of methodology which goes on at foundation stage or KG.
Let's just unpick that. When we say CBSE, I mean, we understand what it means, but no, it's okay. I'm just wondering, parents at home. So the different types of curriculum, I mean, it would be good to know what they are. We've got two great IB schools here, and your UK curriculum.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you're looking in terms of outcomes around international exams like PISA and TIMSS and so on, then the ones that have the best outcomes are CBSE, which is an Indian curriculum, the IB, the International Baccalaureate, and the United Kingdom curriculum, National Curriculum for England. And I think if that's your starting point, if you want outcomes and you want international benchmarks, then those are the three that have the strongest outcomes.
And I mean, that's a really decisive and informative piece of information for parents, regardless of curriculum. It is about outcomes for students and progression and where they can go. James, the IB is not even a curriculum, but it's a philosophy in some ways, isn't it? And it transcends country and transcends borders and boundaries, unlike a British curriculum which both of our schools are. Talk to us about, the IB framework and the schools and the philosophy and why a parent might choose an IB curriculum school.
The School and Nursery Show putting on this event is a fantastic opportunity for parents to come to one place, whether that's virtually or here, to understand the different curriculum models and to speak to schools, because there's no more important decision than where you send your child to school. So I'd like to congratulate them on that. And I think it's very important for parents to actually visit schools, to actually speak to the leaders and to the teachers and to understand the curriculum and possibly see it in action. So from an IB perspective, one of the things that's really important in any IB school, and I think any principal would say exactly the same, that it's about not only academic development, but also about personal development. And in an IB school, there's a really beautiful balance, I feel, through the framework and through the ethos of the school, where students get an opportunity to have academic rigor and be very successful academically, but also they get the opportunity to develop their mindsets, to develop their personalities further, to become internationally minded and culturally aware as well. And also as well, in an IB school, we're really focusing on developing things like critical thinking skills, which are very, very important, and there's a lot of creativity within the teaching and learning, and I think that this is something that's really, really important. And I'm certainly not saying that doesn't exist in the English curriculum, but I think that it's we could all agree it's really important that children have fun and enjoy coming to school. And I think that's very, very important. And with any curriculum, it's really important to ensure that students are engaged, that they're motivated. And for me, one of the beautiful things about the IB framework is the balance of that rigor, but the opportunity for students to develop personal skills that are going to enable them to be future ready. And there's the old cliche of, there are jobs out there that, of course, we don't know that exist yet. And that's an educational term that many people use, but it's very true. And I think that over the last year with the pandemic and how people have had to really change the way they think and the way they do things, from students to professionals to teachers to organizations across the world, it shows the importance of being resilient and also the importance of being able to be adaptable. And I think for me, one of the big things about an IB education is it certainly promotes students to be resilient, adaptable, and to acquire those skills that enable them to be successful later on in life.
I mean, it's interesting, two Davids and a James, and I come to the second David in the room, and of course you got to follow that one really, because you're an IB curriculum as well. But, I think we started by saying curriculum isn't the most important piece, but yes, the essence of the curriculum is important, isn't it? Just wondering if you have anything to add in relation to sort of the discussion so far.
Yes, I think I'll try not to repeat what's been said, but I think it's looking at the sort of philosophical, pedagogical approach to a curriculum. I think the IB curriculum from a very young age is very inquiry-based. It's very much developing the skills and attributes required to be a successful learner. And I think you're right. I think it's very much looking at the end in mind. I like the IB curriculum, the way it's really thought through, well, what are the skills, not only the academic rigor and the outcomes, but what are the skills that are required to be a successful learner, a successful lifelong learner, and then to progress to the next stage of education, might that be university. And, even when we have parents and children coming to school that are enrolling at perhaps an earlier year or grade, very much looking at the end in mind, in terms of what universities might they be interested in, what careers might they be interested in. But it's not just in terms of what outcomes, but also what skills are required. And really, the IB curriculum being one that teaches flexibility, adaptability, open-mindedness, respect, tolerance, all of the attributes that we want as parents, but also we want to make sure that they take to university and to be successful lifelong learners, to have a successful career.
But I think it's fair to say, I can see David twitching beside me. I'm twitching myself almost, because I'm listening, thinking, gosh, that's what we make integral to our curriculum. And I'm sure if we had a colleague here from a CBSE curriculum, or indeed a French curriculum, or one of the Japanese school,
sure,
they would say the same type of thing. But it is an interesting question. The number of parents that we have that come and visit our schools with their 3.5, 4-year-old, and it is about university progression, because we're in an international community where they may move from place to place. How transient is a British curriculum? Because it is an area that parents often ask, how can I package it up and move to a different country, for example?
Yeah, I think the UK curriculum is one of the most widespread international curriculums that is available around the world. Anywhere you go, there'll be British schools. And what we always do in our thinking is to make sure that if our students want to leave us and go to another British school or go back to the UK, then they'll be ready and they'll be equipped to do that. And just going back on to what you were saying earlier, I can't let that go, all that stuff. IB is great, no problem with that. No. But also when I walk around my foundation stage, for example, and I see the inquiry-based learning and the critical thinking that's going on, I think, yeah, we're doing that as well. So and it does depend on the leadership and the pedagogy of the individual school to make sure that those things are happening. And I think you've got to look at the strengths of schools as well. In that the biggest growing curriculum in Dubai is the UK curriculum. I mean, it's growing around about 7% year on year compared to other curricula. So it's obviously a very popular one that rings bells with parents. So I think those sorts of things need to be taken into account. It's very fast growing. It's the biggest curriculum in terms of numbers in Dubai as well.
I think it's fair to say probably historically there were huge disparities between many curriculums around the world. But I think you've picked up on it when you were talking about lifelong learners and those skills for older children particularly. When they leave school, how independent you want them to be. I think many curriculum have recognised that, and they've taken the best practices, not just from the IB, but we look at the International Primary Curriculum, the IPC, which many of us use. We look at some of the great research that's come out of, the northern states in Australia, from New Zealand, from different parts of the world, and the US as well. Some of the great research that's come from there. And we've modified our curriculums, haven't we? But still, it's still a question for parents. I can see you've something to add on that, James.
To add that I think it's very, very important that it's not a competition.
Yeah.
This is about parents, and it's about parents understanding the curriculums, and they're all amazing curriculums, may I add. And students are very, very successful going through all of these curriculums, and they're very famous. But I think for parents, it's really, really important to understand the curriculums so that they can see what's best for their child. I think that's the important thing, and certain curriculums will suit certain types of learners, and I think so. It's very important that schools are open and that they invite parents in and that they spend time helping them understand the curriculums and why they may benefit their child. And I think that's what's the beauty of events like this, really, because it enables parents to have those discussions. Because of course, like you mentioned, there are benefits to all of the curriculums, and I think that as educators, that we have to remember that for parents it can be very confusing. It can be very confusing.
Yeah, and I think on that point, David, just to throw to you, I am confused. I listen to everything everybody says, and they all sound wonderful. Let me take curriculum even out of the discussion for a second. What are the 3 key things that parents should look for in the school? And so let's forget about curriculum, because we're all agreed that curriculum transcends everything that we do. What key things should parents be more concerned about than curriculum?
Just 3?
Just 3. I'm going to nail you to 3 because I'm going to go to your counterparts for the same thing.
Absolutely. I mean, look, one curriculum is not better than another curriculum. They're just different. And I think you look at the end in mind. You look obviously at universities and what grades they would accept for different curriculum programs. As a parent myself, I often put myself in the shoes of a parent rather than as a head of school. And I think, what do I want for my child? That's why we said visiting the school is so important, having that sort of broad understanding of what the school offers. So first of all, I'm going to visit the school, and if I can't visit in person, I'm going to visit it virtually, or I'm going to speak to key people in the school. Can I see my child in that school? Can I see them being happy? Can I see them being safe? Can I see them making progress? And progress might not just be academically. Absolutely. It might be as a child. So what is the philosophy of the curriculum, but what is the philosophy of the school? What is their approach to teaching and learning? What is their approach to well-being, to care, guidance and support for my child? One of the things I love about parent tours is that every parent tour is different. Every child is different and so unique. So everybody listening into this now, they will in their own mind will have 3 very different things to perhaps what I've said. But for me, is my child going to be happy? Is it a safe, caring, learning environment? And can I see my child making progress academically, in terms of end outcome as well, but also progress in terms of developing them into a responsible, caring, tolerant person, leader of the future?
I'm sitting thinking you've got your own back now, because I've come to you so often at the end for a question. I'm not sure how people are going to top that with 3 more important things than, happiness, well-being and progress, really. But David's thoughts from you?
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah. It's hard to disagree with that one.
But I've been very lucky in my time in Dubai. I've been here quite a few years, and I've worked for the government here, and I've also worked as an independent consultant. So I've visited many different curriculum schools. I've worked with Philippine curriculum, I've worked with the US curriculum and so on. And as we keep saying, the ultimate is, doesn't matter which curriculum it is, all those things, the happiness and the progress and the well-being and so on. But there's also cultural appropriateness as well. I think, so for example, I go back to the Philippine school, or I go back to another school, Japanese school or French school, and there's also got to be that understanding of that home culture that those students have also got to inculcate in themselves as well, I think, in that, so they do, when they do return to their home countries, they don't feel like a fish out of water. They are able to go back to the Philippines, or to go back to Japan, or to go back to Germany, and still understand the education system and the context of all that. So I think that's just a slight aside there, that it's those maybe less international curricula where parents choose those schools because they're of a particular country. And I think that's something that also needs to be taken into account.
I mean, it's certainly an interesting, it's a thought-provoking discussion that actually we could spend another half-hour discussion. Should we be more about inclusion and diversity, particularly in an international context? But I can understand sometimes the challenges that young people will face if they then do have to go back home, and how they get thrown in at the deep end in something that's very, very different. So
and I think that's
good point. Yeah,
both our curricula are very clear about the individualization and meeting the individual needs of students. And I think that's where your happiness comes out. That's where the progress comes out. And I think maybe some curricula don't do that quite as well as the UK and the IB curriculum do. But I think that's treating each child as an individual, making their parents feel as though that they're being treated as an individual as well. As you said, every parent comes into the school with a different child, and every child is different.
I think that's right. I think it's not just personalising, like you said, through the curriculum. It's actually when a family visits the school, and hopefully with the child, the first question is, what are you interested in? To the child, what are you interested in? What are you looking for? What are your hobbies? What excites you? And I think the British and the IBA curriculum allows you to tailor to the individual needs of the child, and I think that's important. And a parent wants to know that, yes, this is the curriculum on offer, and my child will be safe, my child will be happy, and they will make progress. But actually, my child has real, genuine interest in this area. How can you as a school meet those needs, whether it be academically or beyond the curriculum? And
I'm sure if we had a colleague here from an American curriculum school, we would all concur with exactly the same thing. Anything to add to the top three, James?
Well, I think of course, safety, happiness, and student progress is, of course, they're the key. But I think the other thing that's very important is actually involving parents in the partnership. Parents need to understand the curriculum. They need to understand the progress that their children are making on a regular basis, so that they are part of the partnership that enables the child to achieve their dreams. And I think that all curriculums can do that, and that's down to the school to make sure that they are working closely with parents, and also as well listening to students. Students need lots of opportunities, and they need to have high aspirations. So the ethos of a school is very, very important. A positive culture, and children having a can-do approach, and believing that they can achieve anything, and the school and their parents are there to support them to do that.
We've got a question that's just come in from a parent who's watching online, and in some ways it's quite a challenging question, because what I don't want to do is to set us against each other, because I think that we're actually united by our similarities, and the differences between curriculums are very, very minute. But the question is, in layman terms, what actually is the difference between the curriculum? Is it the subjects? Is it the content? Is it the method of teaching? Just maybe to give parents at home, despite the fact that we're saying, we've got so many things in common, if we just had to pinpoint one or two things that we believe philosophically do differentiate the curriculums, what might they be? David, if I start with you with the British curriculum.
Yeah, I think the British curriculum, obviously, it's subject based from above EYFS, and obviously schools approach that differently. There can be thematic learning and so on. But I think we do a lot of what IB does, but probably not to the same extent as IB does. I don't know if that's if that rings true with you. I think IB at this end of like critical thinking and all that sort of inquiry-based learning and so on, and the UK curriculum for England, a little bit to this side of it. And so I think there's a lot of similarities, but I think you've taken it a step further. I don't know how that rings. tool with
James?
you.
Yeah, I think, for parents out there, I think assessment is a little bit different as well. Students have the opportunity in an IB school of being involved in the community. They have opportunities in being involved in different projects, as well as, of course, exams and recalling knowledge. I mean, that's also very important. But there's lots of opportunities, I think, for students to develop their mindsets through different types of assessments. And there's variety in an IB school in terms of perhaps teaching and learning and the actual way that the framework is structured. So, for example, in an IB school in the PYP, there's a framework for teaching and learning that involves inquiry. And involves students collaborating, but actually the actual structure of the framework is the English curriculum. So the actual rigor and the structure of the framework is there in terms of an academic perspective of what the curriculum is. But the wonderful teaching and learning methods that happen within an IB school, and of course I'm not saying they don't in other schools, but those wonderful teaching and learning methods.
What are those methods though?
Well,
just nail it down.
I'll give you an example. In an IB school, we look at relating subjects to real life contexts, and also as well on a regular basis, and also we link subjects together on a regular basis. So for example, we could be in a maths lesson, and the start of the lesson could be a video clip of a hurricane moving across the Atlantic Ocean to a Caribbean island, and the students are on the edge of their seats because it's a very exciting start to the lesson. And then actually the actual mathematical aspects of the lesson is looking perhaps at the impact the hurricane is going to have on the island as it sets in, and perhaps the speed and the density of the hurricane. And in that same lesson, we might bring in an element of geography about the region, and we might bring in an element of science about the hurricane. So what we're trying to do through horizontal articulation meetings and vertical articulation meetings of the teachers is we're trying to develop critical thinking skills and bring lessons alive. I think for me, that's something that happens on a regular basis in an IB school.
And I think that's actually probably a really good comparator there when we talk about it's more subject specific in the UK curriculum, it's more integrated in its learning. I think we probably have the same aspirations for young people.
And obviously we do
but I can see the difference.
Obviously we do have cross-curricular.
Yeah, we do. Lots of
maybe
integrated,
taking it to the next step. I think the other things that parents also would be interested in, obviously, is things like value for money, and the fact that there's a wide range of fee bands in Dubai, and I think in terms of the UK curriculum, you get what you pay for. You can get into a UK school which is affordable, very affordable, and you can get into a UK school which is premium, obviously, and upper premium. And I think that's an important aspect for parents to look into as well. I know it's not strictly part of the conversation, but it does seem to be this correlation between curricula and cost sometimes.
I suppose some of the challenges for parents, though, particularly in Dubai, is you see so many schools who offer English national curriculum until the age of 16 and then do IB diploma. And, when you're talking about a philosophy in a school that permeates the whole school, how does that fit in? I'll throw it over to you. I know it's sorry about that, David, but, how does that fit in? Because that is another option for parents, isn't it? It's to take the best of both worlds, to mix curriculums, to move between schools, and to have that flexibility.
Of course, and that is a popular model.
Okay.
And I don't think one model is better than the other. I think we are an IB World School, and we have those key transition points and that teaching and learning pedagogy and methodology working through the school. But I think if you have GCSE or GCSE and then the diploma program. That is a model that works equally well. Then that's down to the school. As you were saying before, you look at the quality of teaching in the school, you look at the ethos of the school. Are they meeting the individual needs of the learner? Is it safe, well-being, progress? And then I think that's fine. I think that's what I think is one of the great things about the IB and all the curriculum that we're discussing. There is flexibility with that in terms of how you structure it.
And on that topic, the reason I sort of raised it is we have got a good question from a parent who's watching, and the question is really simple. For a teenager, is it really difficult to move from British to IB?
I mean,
in my opinion, no. because I've seen it happen so many times.
Me too. Yeah,
So, and I think that's why the UK and the IB curriculum is set up so that it is inclusive. It allows children to move from school to school and even between the two curricula. So really it's going to be down to how the school supports the child and the family with transition into the school, and of course the motivation of the student to make that transition. But as a school, we would always welcome any child from a different curriculum, as we all would. And our job is to make that, to facilitate it and transition to make it make it work for the child and for the parents.
And we're actually, right full circle back to that opening discussion point, which was it's about the child.
Yeah.
You choose the school, you choose the curriculum, you may need to switch, and it may be appropriate to switch for a child, and to make that transition between curriculums. But if it's right for that child, and they will blossom as a result of that, then we would actually encourage that type of flexibility. Wouldn't we?
Absolutely, and I think it comes back to the point made earlier. Actually, how confusing this is for parents. It's very confusing.
It's confusing for us.
You perhaps have a system where students are taking IGCSEs and then they're moving into the diploma. Now we know that model is a fantastic model, one of many fantastic models, along with the model of pure IB qualifications of an MYP and DP and CP. But I think it comes back to the point that schools need to really be very open in how they're educating parents, and so that the parents and the students really understand what the courses are about, so that they can choose the appropriate courses. And I think another thing that's very, very important when parents choose a school is the careers advice and guidance. That should happen from a young age. It's not something that should be bolted on at the end, but it's a process that should happen to really ensure that students understand the different career options out there, the different routes, the different exams they might have to take to go to the top universities in the world, the different scholarship options perhaps parents need to find out about. So, a really successful, outstanding school will have those types of things really embedded within the culture. So then, again, coming back to the parents being involved in the partnership with the teachers and the students, that's how it all works effectively.
I've got a final question, and David, I'm going to throw the question to you simply because of this. David won. I'm not sure if I do that, actually somebody will take offense, but David immediately to my left. Simply because we don't have a colleague from an American curriculum school here, but you've been very involved in terms of, the inspectorate and review of schools. And the question is, we've talked about British versus IB. What is the difference between an IB curriculum and an American curriculum? And I'm wondering if you can just, in layman's terms, articulate the difference between the two.
Adam, I mean, if I can talk about outcomes, or are you talking about
Talking about actual curriculum.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably better for our IB colleagues to make that contrast.
I mean, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is, there isn't an American curriculum, is there?
No.
There's a core curriculum, the common core element which sits within. And then you have...
It varies by state.
Yes, so you have all the different states who offer... something like Aero is more of a holistic common core curriculum to it. But you often find an awful lot of schools who will do American curriculum and deliver IB post-16 as well. It fits nicely on top of that. Have either of you got any experience of that might be able to draw on the comparators with an American curriculum?
There are a lot of similarities, actually, and the transition is something that's normally very smooth. So, and it's actually one of the fastest growing curriculums now in terms of IB working closely with the American curriculum in America. It's really, really escalating. So there's lots of similarities. And I think that, again, it comes down to the individual child and what best suits them when they look into what courses are available and what kind of learner they are. So it's having that knowledge of both systems, really. Even though they're very similar in many ways, there are differences. So it's having the knowledge and understanding what's best for the individual child. I think that's the best way to look at it.
But I think it would be let's debunk the myth that there is a rigor to the American curriculum, just as there is with every curriculum
Absolutely.
model. Whilst it's fluid and whilst it might not be a national curriculum, there certainly is a structure and a framework. And again, our best advice would be, because we're not American curriculum experts, is, go to the schools.
Yeah.
Speak to the schools, speak to the academic teams, speak to the pastoral teams and admission teams at those schools, and find out the differences by comparing the two to make sure it's right for your child.
And I think that's right. And I think you do need to look at the different states as well, as you said, New York as opposed to California, as opposed to the other ones. But also there are outstanding American schools in Dubai.
Absolutely.
And, just as there are less outstanding ones as well. As with all curricula, it depends on the leadership, it depends on the quality of teaching that goes on in the particular school.
We can see from, the interest that's always generated when we talk about curriculum and curriculum choices, that it still is one of those areas that forever, perhaps in a day, parents will ask the questions about. But I think we're all agreed, gentlemen, that the most important thing is, as you said, you encapsulated, it is the happiness of the child, it is the well-being of the child, and it is the progress and making sure that that connectivity with the school sits at the heart of everything that we do. So despite the fact that we're all agreed that curriculum might not be the first thing we'll put in our list when choosing a school, we respect that it is a minefield for parents. So please do join us here if you can and come and visit some of the schools. If not, please do make the right inquiries by contacting schools and speaking directly to them. On behalf of the School and Nursery Show, my huge gratitude to David immediately to my left, to James in the middle, and to David further away for joining us today and for sharing their insights about school structures and systems here in the UAE. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time today.
Thank you.
Remember that you can catch all of these recordings. They'll be there for weeks ahead. And if you have further questions, just reach out to any of us that are here in the room or to the other schools around the city, and you'll be sure to have your answers. So thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.